Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the inaugural Biosecurity Innovation Exchange, and a special welcome to our colleagues from New Zealand and some of the innovators that have come over from New Zealand as well. My name's Lyn O'Connell. I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Biosecurity Implementation Branch, and I'll be your host this morning. I'd just like to start the day by acknowledging that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I acknowledge the first Australians as the traditional custodians of this continent, whose culture are among the oldest living cultures in human history. I pay my respects to the elders of the community and extend my recognition to their descendants who are present. So we're delighted that you could all join us today for what will hopefully be a very engaging day, and a day that encourages us to really start to think differently about what we do in the biosecurity space. Our speakers this morning will discuss in a little bit more detail, but suffice it to say that we know that when it comes to managing biosecurity risk, we simply just can't keep doing things as we've done in the past. The environment that we're working in is very rapidly changing, as are the risks that we're dealing with. We know that technology has advanced more in the past 30 years than in the previous 2,000 years, and with exponential growth and set to continue and new challenges arising, we really need to be able to work smarter, not just harder. And that'll be critical to our ability to effectively manage biosecurity into the future. So that's what today is really all about. It's having the opportunity to talk with you about our biosecurity business and hearing what innovative ideas or innovative approaches might be out there that you're aware of that can help us to work differently, to help us to work smarter and ensure our biosecurity system, both in Australia and New Zealand, can remain sustainable into the future. So before we get underway, just a couple of few housekeeping items. So should there be a fire, there's actually 2 exits that we can go out of, so both here. The bathrooms are located out that door and just to the right. And the other thing I'd just ask if people can make sure their phones are on silent before we kick off. And just might not get the opportunity to say before the end of the day, so if you do need a taxi at the end of the day, just go to the information desk at the entry and the main lobby and they'll get a taxi for you. As far as the proceedings for the day and how we're running it, you'll see in your agenda within your pack, the format of the day is broken into 2 parts. So firstly, we'll have the keynote presentations, which is obviously here in the theatre. We're then going to be moving to the peninsula rooms, which are down where you registered, and breaking up into 3 rooms, if you like, 3 breakout sessions. And that will be where we'll talk a little bit more about, as per the topic in each room, a bit more about our challenges, but we're very keen for that 2-way dialogue to hear your ideas about how we can tackle some of these challenges. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that this morning's sessions are actually being live streamed on our department's YouTube channel, and I think that's a first for our department, so an innovation in itself. Before I introduce Lyn, I just wanted to also recognise that today is International Women's Day, so obviously celebrating the social, economic, cultural, political, etc. achievements of women all around the world. And so I think it's quite fitting that our first speaker today is Deputy Secretary Lyn O'Connell, a leading woman in the Australian Public Service herself. Lyn's responsible for leading the biosecurity function within the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources. So not a small job by any means, and I think you'd agree with that, Roger. Lyn has been an absolute avid champion for innovation in the biosecurity area, and this day certainly wouldn't have been possible without your enthusiasm, Lyn, and your support. So join with me and please welcome Lyn O'Connell.
Thanks very much, Lee, and welcome everybody to the inaugural Biosecurity Innovation Exchange. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as well and add my respects to them as the traditional elders. And today is International Women's Day, so I do want to say a few words about International Women's Day. There's an old adage that tries to describe why women are underrepresented in the science-based or STEM studies. You know, young women are not entering STEM and science-based studies at the rate at which is equal or equivalent. And that adage is apparently that you can't be what you can't see. So I want to say to all women out there and young girls who are considering science-based studies, have a look, because here's someone you can see who is, myself, a science graduate and is currently in a leading science-based role as the head of biosecurity for Australia. So I encourage you all to encourage your daughters, your nieces, your friends' daughters, random young children and women to consider STEM-based subjects and science, and to talk about what exciting career opportunities there are for women and men in science-based roles. You also don't need to go any further than having a look for a terrific role model at Australia's Australian of the Year, who is a woman scientist and has done some absolutely fascinating world-leading science. So a terrific acknowledgement on International Women's Day. So welcome again to the inaugural Biosecurity Innovation Exchange. This exchange was born out of a conversation that Roger and I had. Roger is New Zealand's head of biosecurity, if you like, head of operations in the relevant department in New Zealand, and my counterpart. We had a discussion in relation to innovation and thought, what a terrific thing where we can collaborate across Australia and New Zealand, hold this innovation exchange event to draw out what innovation can be applied to our biosecurity wicked problems that we both share. And this event is also strongly modelled on our quite successful science exchanges. We hold regular science exchanges within the department and partner from people certainly outside of government. So Australia and New Zealand have a very long tradition of cooperation, and indeed Roger and I managed to organise to get our two Prime Ministers together late last week to have a conversation as a prelude to today's event. And I'd like to just quote one of the remarks that our Prime Minister, Prime Minister Turnbull, made following the strong dialogue with the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, and this is what he had to say in his remarks about their bilateral. And he said that our close relationship is characterised by shared values, democracy and the rule of law, freedom, the enterprise of Kiwis and Australians working together. And I think that concept of the enterprise of Kiwis and Australians working together is a good metaphor for what we're doing here today in looking at innovation in our respective biosecurity systems. I always say that I think there are two countries in the world to whom biosecurity matters the most, and that's Australia and New Zealand. So the challenge for us today is not just to look at innovation and our biosecurity challenges, but to actually aspire to be world's best, because we are the two countries in the world to whom biosecurity matters the absolute most. So I want to encourage you to think about this opportunity and to think big and to think world-leading, because that's where I'd like us to be in terms of our biosecurity systems. So as Lee mentioned, our systems are under pressure. We're seeing a rapid growth and increase in trade, an increase in passenger numbers, and both of those metrics are expected to double by 2030. They're constantly doubling and on an exponential growth curve, which is good for economies, but it presents biosecurity challenges. There's also a great deal more complexity these days in supply chains. Supply chains aren't simple origin destination that they used to be. They're far more complex webs, and that also poses some challenges for our biosecurity system. We're also unfortunately seeing a growth in people who choose not to comply with our systems, not to comply with our rules, and that presents some real dangers and real challenges too. So in order to meet these challenges, my department's taking action, and innovation is a strong part of that action. We need to deliver innovation into our systems to help meet those challenges. If you look around the world and the modern society today, there's plenty of innovation that's happening. It's unprecedented in terms of a time of change. We've got things like robotics. We're all talking about autonomous vehicles, and states are passing laws for autonomous driverless vehicles. We've got 3D printing. We've got sensors. We've got artificial intelligence. All these things are impacting on our daily lives, which is terrific. And with all of these technologies and approaches, there's terrific opportunities, and opportunities to apply some of these technologies to our world of biosecurity. So the question is, in terms of this rapid evolving innovation in our world, can innovation help some of our biosecurity challenges? I absolutely think so. And I think one of the opportunities that we have is to look how these innovations are being applied in other industries, and to think whether there's an opportunity to apply them in our biosecurity challenges. And I'd like to share just a small cameo, boast perhaps a little, about my department and some of the innovations that we have done. Last year we were awarded the Public Sector Innovation Award for the development of one of our systems. It's called MARS, which is a great acronym, and the team worked hard to get that acronym. But it's about Maritime Arrival Reporting System, which is the acronym for MARS. But what it essentially is about recording of maritime ships coming to Australia in order to minimise the risk of pests and diseases in Australia. So the idea for that MARS system actually came out of a conversation, and a conversation over coffee with a few people, including industry and the international shipping industry, and certainly the product that we developed and delivered off the back of that conversation has been acknowledged by industry to be a terrific step forward in managing biosecurity risk, but doing so in a way that was, paperless, that was easy and simple for captains of ships, etc., to do. And so it proudly won last year a significant innovation award in Australia. So I'm excited to be here today and see all the people gathered here today, hear about the workshops that we've got, and to talk about our challenges, to welcome our friends from New Zealand. Roger and some of his team are significantly here, to welcome researchers who are involved in pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and doing things differently, and trying to make, we're all with the aim of trying to make our biosecurity system contemporary and fit for the challenges that lie ahead. So this is an opportunity to bring together people who are passionate individuals, to facilitate the sharing of ideas, to learn from each other, and most importantly, to really think differently. And as Lee said, we'll have an opportunity to experience what thinking differently might look like very soon. Most innovation actually comes from people from different backgrounds collaborating together over a shared problem or with a particular shared goal. So I think today is an exciting opportunity to bring together people from those different backgrounds and to have a look at the wicked problems that we face in biosecurity, and to start to develop some of the exciting and innovative solutions to those wicked problems. So you all have different sets of experience to bring, and there's potential for quite significant innovation in the way that we deliver our biosecurity systems in order to safeguard Australia and New Zealand for future generations. So our very strong biosecurity system certainly safeguards our agricultural industries, the environment and the economy from the threats of exotic pests and diseases and weeds. Our agriculture sector is a very significantly growing part of our economy. It feeds us. We export significant quantities of our produce, and we go and enter into the high-quality, pest and disease-free markets as part of our significant branding, which brings around quite a differentiated price for our national product around the world. So I challenge you all here today to think really big, push the boundaries, consider the impossible, have a look at those wicked problems and try to solve them. And together I feel that we can apply a lot of innovative technologies and approaches to the way that we work so that we can work smarter for the future. So thank you for your participation today, and I really look forward to engaging with you throughout the day and hearing the results of your exciting ideas at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Just before we throw to Roger, we've just got a short video on innovation that we'd like you to see. Okay, Lyn, thank you for that. And I think what you're saying is you'd like to see biosecurity up there in the future. So some exciting things, and certainly those ideas start somewhere, and so why not here? So before I invite Roger, I'll tell you a little bit about Roger. So Roger Smith is the Chief Operations Officer from New Zealand's Ministry for Primary Industries. So Roger leads New Zealand's MPI operations with responsibility for delivering border clearance services, incursion diagnostics, surveillance, response management, compliance, intelligence, operational planning, and national coordination. So again, a big role. Roger's had more than 30 years' experience in trade and border management. And Roger, I know you were brought up on your family's dairy farm and a commercial orchard, I believe, as well. And you've assured us that your gumboots have seen some on-farm action recently, and you're still known to occasionally get in and turn your hand to milking or jump on the tractor. So again, we're delighted you could join us today, Roger, along with your colleagues that you brought over from New Zealand and your innovators. So welcome, and come on up. Thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks, Lyn, and thanks to our Australian host for bringing this all together. My pathway has been a bit different than Lyn's. My science development was milking cows and driving tractors, but for a boy that's the best thing you can do, because we were also contractors, so we had diggers and graders and other good stuff. So I did my first contracting job at age 7. I'm told now that's to be frowned upon, but in the previous time, that was where you learnt your real skills. As Lyn said, this event came about through a conversation. And I think that's the important thing we want to remember today when we go forward, is that big ideas and big results come through starting with a conversation and then with cooperation. So normally when we come to Australia, and maybe it's Women's Day, it's not the appropriate thing, but usually when Australian and New Zealand men at least get together, we're more, cooperation's not always the topic we find, but we like to talk about competition. And that usually gets the energy running, and then lots of good ideas and lots of good discussion and lots of long evenings. Today we're coming in a different area. This is about one area where New Zealand and Australia 100% can cooperate and work together, and should work together. Because as two countries have a strong biosecurity need and interest, we have a need to get our own citizens for both countries to understand that, to make biosecurity relevant to our people, but also to move with science and technology and use all the tools we can in our toolbox. So as Lyn said, we're facing increasing challenges. We've opened up our markets, we've opened up our tourist routes. The New Zealand today is very different than New Zealand even 10 years ago. So our trade volumes are changing, they're increasing. They're coming, to be quite fair, from countries that produce or have a higher biosecurity risk. And same with our tourists. Our traditional tourist pattern in the old days was UK, Australia, etc., who were all fairly compliant and understood and read English and had similar values around food, etc. Our new tourist base comes out of Asia, where food takes a much more important focus for them, and so therefore they present a higher risk. And so we need new tools to handle that, because in the end we've sort of peaked out, to be fair, particularly at our Auckland airport, we have no more space. And so while we've increased our staffing levels from 300 in just the border space to 500, and we've moved from 20 dogs to 100 dogs or 80 dogs, there is really no more room. We need to find technology and solutions and think about doing things differently. So we have a big challenge. And then we go back through how we do these things in history, and it was always Big Bang Theory. Right? Consultants come in, do a program, modelling, say it's going to look like this, and only for $100 million, which will stretch to $300 million, we'll have a result that will be outdated by the time we build it, and it's not what we need. So New Zealand has had a history of being very good at the number 8 wire mentality. For those that's, just might be masking tape or gaffer tape these days, but getting little ideas, bolting them together, coming up with a solution, and that works for us. It works when I was on the farm, it works when you're in business. The issue is that we have lots of little pockets of innovation, and our ministries covers a wide range of activities, and you end up getting little specialist areas developing little bits of tools, but we don't get to leverage off them. Nobody gets to use them, and then of course you find out, I think in 1999 when we suddenly had this Y2K event happening and everybody started to panic and we all started to look at our systems, and once again the consultants had a great opportunity to say, well, you've got 5,000 different little operating systems and little databases here and there. So what we need to do, and from an MPI perspective, is we need to take a different look at how we do our technology. And we also need to be able to reflect the needs of the user, because often our technology has been driven by, I said, the consultants that come in, the big five, or by senior leadership people who think they know everything and have a vision for the future, which might be more about our legacy than what we really need. We need some of this to be driven ground up. We also need to start identifying what we're trying to fix. Because again, there's lots of great innovation happening, but often we invest in solutions that don't really have a problem. And so we need to have this conversation across the entire field, from those who operate, those who own the problem, and those who need to move forward. Now, I have a whole pile of notes here, which was very kind for my secretary and advisors to write, and I haven't actually looked at them. So the one area I would cover, though, is just why we've done things a little bit differently. And this is where the conversation that Lyn and I had, which sort of led to this, and then Lee picked it up and ran with Desi, who's our science sort of lead on this stuff. And so, as I said before, we've had lots and lots of projects going on, as everybody does, for years and years and years. And some are successful, and some are big bang, and some are little niches, but no coordinated approach. And also very hard to get fund. It's much easier for me to go to my table, like our sort of a board, and say I need $50 million, because I want to do this big thing. When I go and say I need $50,000 to do this little prototype pilot, it's like, well, find it in your own budget. Don't come back to the table. And so you end up with all these little projects and pilots that would be fantastic, but traditionally have been very hard to fund, because you really only come back to the budget table for the big dollars. And so we started with a new system with Desi. Desi, where are you? Because you're going to be one of this, an import to New Zealand, sitting over at the back there, one of our lead players. Now, Desi is our lead on research, technology and innovation practice. Now, this is a fast-fail approach to life. It's what a commercial sector would do. Normally, a government agency wouldn't do it because we're too scared to fail. And if we think we're going to fail, we want to bring in some consultants so that we can hook the blame on somebody else. And if they're a really big consultancy, you've got a big name, much easier to fail with IBM on the end of the project as opposed to saying you've used Jade in New Zealand or something like that. So Desi's job is to run around and encourage and invigorate and get people, be it from universities, be it CRIs, be it from our people in the field, to look at ideas and concepts and then put them through a quick process and see if we can back some winners. So I think we've done about 70 so far. We've analysed about 70 projects in the 2 years that Desi's been here. Normally we might analyse 1 or 2 in a normal previous model. So we've done about 70. I think we've got 15 or so, these are rough figures, that have gone through and now we've got about 8 are in prototype stage. And so this is taking some really interesting different bits of technology and going with the New Zealand distributed model, bit of number 8 wire. Can we bolt it together? Can we make it work? Let's just make one up with a bit of balsa wood and a bit of gaffer tape and see, float it out there, and if it fails, we just write it off because we haven't invested a long-term project. And it's inspiring for me because finally I can see the ability for us to develop technology and tools for our people in the field. And again, we now want to share that way of doing business with our Australian colleagues because this is the area where we can cooperate. And would be fair that we're often the junior partner to our Australian colleagues and we're all strapped for cash, but we know Australia is wealthy. So, so we thought it'd be a fantastic idea to come along here with your brawn and our brains, or maybe our beauty and your whatever, that we could find some projects and some initiatives and some conversations to get us working together and focusing on that outcome. So that's the whole purpose of this event today. It's sort of like speed dating for those that are in their late 50s. I don't do that, but I'm fairly bad. But I'm sure there's new apps that you can do this quicker on. I was going to mention, then somebody said, no, that's not one you should talk about. So this is about everybody in this room having a conversation, having an idea, waking up to seeing what we're doing, going, oh, actually New Zealand's got the same needs as Australia, Australia's got the same needs as us. Or actually the Defence Force has got the same needs as us, or a scientific community's got the same needs as us. And I don't care if we come out and we agree to do a massive project that's worth $10, right? We've just got to get off our asses and get something started and happening and done. And so there's great pockets between our CRIs and our universities in that, and there's a good cooperation at this level, but we need to bring everybody together in the room, have a free and frank conversation, pass your cards around, make sure you have a conversation, see if anything happens, and then at the end of this, I don't want this to be, that was a great inaugural innovation and it was all good and we all go home. The New Zealanders from Wellington goes, that was good because there's a storm back at home at the moment, so we missed the wet, rainy, windy day and a beautiful day in Canberra. I want us to go home going, actually, I know that Lee Kale has something of interest to us, and actually I'm going to pick up the phone, or actually I'm going to get on the plane and we're going to discuss it. We're going to do some work with CBRA or whatever. We're going to look at another initiative. It might be CR to CRI to CRI, might be government to government, whatever. In the end, to make Lyn look good, because it's her year, we need to be able to announce something later in life that is actually meaningful and real, that we have got some projects to co-share on and co-work on. That will make biosecurity for both our countries stronger. It'll make the relationships between our countries stronger. It will engage and enthuse our staff. It will actually, in the end, help productivity and you know. So this is a day that you should enjoy. Think of that you're on the pathway to something special. I know we've got some fantastic speakers here. Obviously, nice choice, thank you. As holders of America's Cup, we're very pleased to have a specialist thing. And having won the cricket last night, good to have a cricketer here. So you've done a great job to our Australian host, and I look forward to lots of good conversation and in the end, something meaningful that we can take home and build on and work on and deliver something. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger, and thanks again for coming along and bringing your colleagues from Wellington today. And I've got to say that collaboration over the last year has been tremendous. And I've got to say that sometimes in the mornings I'll come in and it's not unusual that I'll have an email from Roger in talking about the latest innovation that's happening somewhere in the world, which has just been tremendous. And of course with Desi, I think that relationship there is really important. But I've got to warn you, and please do have a talk to Roger and Desi during the break, but don't fall into the same trap that I did when one of my colleagues set up a meeting for me to meet with Desi. Of course, she said, "Oh, you've got to meet Desi. You've got to meet him. He's the innovation guy." And so that was tremendous. So for the first 10 minutes, I called him Dizzy until I realised that it's actually Desi if you're Australian. So if you have a chance to catch up with Desi over the over the break, please do so, or Roger. So now, aside from biosecurity, we know that if there's one thing that Anzacs are very passionate about, it's their sport. The friendly Trans-Tasman rivalry is one of the most celebrated rivalries in the world, and I certainly came across that very quickly when I came from Canada many years ago. And I realised that whether it's rugby, netball, cricket, there's a very long history there that runs deep with lots of tales of underarm deliveries and unfair referee calls and claiming or perhaps even sometimes denying who came from which country. So Far Lap, Robbie Deans, etc. However, there's one sporting endeavour where the Aussies and Kiwis have collaborated with tremendous success. So well, in fact, that the USA actually went on and recruited them, and that is the America's Cup. The America's Cup has always been a great showcase for innovation, and it is the world's oldest sporting trophy, first contested in 1851 when the schooner America crossed the Atlantic and beat 15 British yachts. Over the past 30 years, the performance of the sailing yachts has improved exponentially, and that's been driven by rapid technological advancements combined with strategic tactical decisions. So it's proving that it's not just the tools that you have, but it's how you use them. So I might just have a quick look at this and how innovation has worked in this space.
That was unbelievable.
The winner of the Louis Vuitton Cup, Emirates Team New Zealand. The entire sailing world holds its breath for the start of the 34th America's Cup. Oh, how close can it get?
The postponement card. We'd like to use the postponement card.
We need to go back and regroup. We feel they've got a bit of an edge on us at the moment.
The Kiwis now just one win away from the America's Cup.
It's not over. It's a long way from over.
Imagine if these guys lost from here. What an upset that would be. That'd be one hell of a story. That'd be one hell of a comeback. That's my motivation.
Hydro! Attacking! They almost flipped this thing over. That's incredible. Complete. We are all clear. Race 19, one race for it all.
So a great example of how innovation enabled the greatest comeback in sporting industry. So it's now my pleasure, and I'll introduce you guys before you hop up here, but now my very great pleasure to introduce and invite to the stage three very special guests. So leading the discussion today is former international cricket captain, New Zealand of course, once described as one of the best all-rounders in the world. So Chris Cairns played cricket for New Zealand for more than 3 decades and was named Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 2000 before receiving a New Zealand Order of Merit for services to cricket in 2004. A former Fox Sports presenter, Chris is a lover of all sports and has recently admitted, I know Chris, of chasing Oracle Team USA skipper Jimmy Spithill down a main road in Auckland to congratulate him on his win after the team's incredible comeback in San Francisco. With Chris are 2 of the athletes who are on that winning Oracle team, Australian sailors Kyle Langford and Sam Newton. So again, great example of as Lyn mentioned, Kiwis and Australians working together. So fresh off a Volvo Ocean race boat where he's been racing the Hong Kong to Auckland leg, Kyle played a key role in the 2013 America Cup winning team and in the defence in 2017. Sam grew up sailing on Sydney Harbour and is a 6-time winner of the J.J. Giltinan Trophy, the world's premier 18-foot skiff championship. Sam's also a member of the Oracle team both in 2013 and 17, is currently racing in the Super Foiler Grand Prix around Australia. So thank you all for coming today, and we look forward to hearing about the innovations because I think there's some really good and transferable lessons to us. So welcome the 3 of you up on stage.
Working? Great. For those of you who may not have seen the pen portraits, fit, healthy sailors, overweight ex-cricketer here. I think we'll sort of get on to the comeback, the video, which for me was arguably the greatest comeback in sports history. But I think we'll sort of touch on that comeback element. We'll look at collaboration as another section, as well as push on to a secret weapon, which have developed other aspects, and then the future. So we'll touch on those 4 topics, and we've got some other video footage to sort of go along with that. But throwing to the guys, when you look at being 8-1 down, what was the feeling within the camp about, was Jimmy right in saying that it could be done? So what were the processes inside that to sort of keep the belief going? Jump in.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when you're 8-1 down, it's not very positive at all. It's hard to be a believer. You know, you come in and next thing you're thinking about is this. 3 years of your life in San Francisco, training for this one race. Is he going to throw it all away, and where are you going to next? But you're part of a team. You've invested so much time, so much money. And you invest your whole lives into this, and so like Jimmy said, you have to give it everything, and we were there to give it everything, and so we weren't going to give up, and we did everything, threw everything we had at it to try and win that race back. So.
In particular, when you're in that scenario, backs against the wall, is it an underlying framework that keeps you going, or is it a daily innovation that you're not scared to try anything, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, well, I think when you're in a situation where your back's up against the wall and you've got to take one step at a time. It's a bit cliche, but we were really focusing on get through the start of the race, and then get through the first leg, then the second leg, and and we were really just focused on just surviving each day, because ultimately we were fighting for our survival in the series, and so, every day we were fighting to survive, and each day we were trying something new and really trying to push the boundaries to keep the boat going and going faster. And it's not really until you're, looking down the barrel of the gun that you're really forced to, kind of take on that mentality.
And with you guys as well, like America's Cup is renowned for that, the whole change element. I mean, the surprise aspect of of what any regatta can do with regards to regulations of boats, etc. So when you're faced with that, so when you came into 2013 and sort of all of a sudden boats were flying, talk us through that whole sort of potentially the change management aspect, or dealing with how you go about that process with something that is brand new.
Yeah, I mean, we came in this 2013 Cup, and New Zealand was the first boat to make their boat fly, so you know, it's pretty new to probably most people here, and it was new to us for a catamaran to be flying out of the water. So in about 2011, I think it was, or late 2011, early 2012, we were spying on the Kiwis, as we do. Every day they go sailing, we've got a team of people in New Zealand watching them, and we caught them flying their boat. And you know, that point was like, you know, we need to watch what they're doing, and we need to copy this. We're quite lucky at this stage. We actually had a big catastrophic failure of one of our boats, like the boats you saw on there. So it was about a $10 million boat, disappeared in a matter of about an hour. And we took this opportunity to have a fresh start. We lost our whole boat, so we took this opportunity to learn everything we could from New Zealand, use the 3 months downtime, and just, you know, learn from others basically. And you know, we threw all the ideas out there, started thinking outside the box. You know, we'd been looking at a traditional boat, and here the Kiwis got their boat flying. So you know, it was an eye opener that we need to think big here. You know, we've got to start thinking about the details. We've got to think big, and if we're going to win this America's Cup, you know, it's not going to be in a traditional catamaran. So yeah.
I think as well, there's probably a good way to cut across to the next category, which is collaboration, because I think after 2013 you had particular partners, and then going into 2017 again, new boat, and so I think we'll cut away now to look at one of those partners that was in particular strong with regards to that collaboration for Oracle.
Here at Oracle Team USA, we're extremely competitive, and we want to be the leaders in our industry, in our field, which is sailing. Airbus are the leaders in aviation in their industry, and so working together, it works very well. We collaborate quite well in our debriefs. We have an idea and they think of how to put our idea into effect. So far it's working excellent.
I think there's a lot of similarities between sailing and the aviation industry, and probably now more so than there's ever been.
On your boat you have a rigid wing with flaps, and it's very similar to the design of a wing of an aircraft.
Like us, Airbus operate at a very, very high standard. We perform pre-flight checklists before we even leave. We have a huge design engineering team spending hours and hours on the modelling, on running through all the sophisticated systems and hydraulics before we even go on the water.
Their technology that they bring to the table, along with what our experience in these high-performance catamarans, I think we're making real improvements, and I think the results will show on the water.
Oracle Team USA gets a huge advantage by the collaboration with Airbus by having access to the best technicians in their field worldwide in hydraulics, in aerodynamics, measurement technology. We're able to take some technology that we might have dreamt of or used previously, take it to the next level.
For this project we have a core team of 4 engineers.
2 coming from component department of the flight test department of Airbus, and 2 other people coming from the aerodynamic expertise.
Airbus appreciating a smaller team environment, so together we're creating quite an agile unit.
The goal is to minimize drag and maximize lift, get the most efficient airfoil as possible. Materials are the same, carbon fiber, different types of cores, but high modulus and lower modulus materials, they use the same stuff that we do.
The team is very enthusiastic to come in Bermuda. We are very, very proud of representing Airbus in this mission.
To be involved in a project like this, it's exciting, it's changing all the time, constant development, constant learning. People are really passionate about what they do here.
Airbus and Oracle Team USA are sharing the same spirit of innovation for performance. We are this spirit of the wing. It's the same for you during a race, it's the same for us when we deliver a new aircraft.
It really is flying on the water. So it's such a cool sort of meshing together of the two. And for us, we think it'll give us a competitive advantage.
So as I said, evolving from 2013, whether there was the win, going into 2017, so long period, collaborative partners, what was it that you were focusing on that was new, and what did Airbus bring into the equation with regards to pushing you guys forward?
Well, I think we had a great collaboration with Airbus, and we were quite fortunate to have a lot of good technological partners with Oracle Team USA. And probably the biggest difference from the 2013 America's Cup to the 2017 America's Cup, that we were foiling all the way around the race course. So basically, the boat would never touch the water. And and Airbus is a perfect partner. They're flying planes in the sky, and we're flying boats, but we're just a metre above the water. So we're limited in our fly height, and to keep the boat flying 1 metre above the water, you need incredible accuracy in the control system, and that's what Airbus really helped us with, is using their experience in aeronautics and control systems, hydraulic control systems on planes and electronic control systems to really accurately fly our boat, within the target ride height, and that was like a key factor for us. And unfortunately, the Kiwis did it better than us in the end, and
we'll get to that.
But, we won't talk about that. But just having another industry, they were the engineers and the guys that we worked with were new to sailing, and they brought new ideas that we perhaps hadn't thought about, and and we were also able to offer them a different way of thinking, because with a big company like Airbus, they're very slow reacting, and they develop something, and for example, a hydraulic valve has to go through a million cycles to be put on a plane, whereas our hydraulic components would go through 100 cycles, and then we put it on the boat, because we want stuff now, and we want it yesterday. And so having a company like that to come in, and we were able to teach them a bit about fast reacting, and they were able to teach us things about the incredible accuracy that they kind of are involved with.
And where did that 3D printing aspect sort of come into play as well?
Well, on our boats, we had a lot of 3D printed parts, and actually the rudders on our boat were 3D printed titanium. So we had these titanium sections in the rudder, and they were printed by Airbus, and then also all of the hydraulic, a lot of the hydraulic manifolds are 3D printed, and the valves, and also a lot of the electrical components are 3D printed with plastic. And so that was probably the biggest change in the Cup in terms of development and being able to react quickly. We had three 3D printers operating full time in Bermuda, and they were just logged up with small parts. Rather than having to machine components and tooling, we could just print them and then machine surface the finish and machine the finish and build parts from there.
Sam, with regards to the Oracle team and sort of with regard that collaboration, but coordination and leadership within your team, how did that work with the information flow coming from the guys working together at the top, or was it all inclusive with regards to everybody throwing ideas in and everybody contributing, or how did that flow sort of work with information?
Yeah, I guess naturally we're broken up in all our departments. We're part of the sailing team, so above us we have a big design team, but it's pretty important for the design team and the sailing team to collaborate together. The designers have some great ideas on paper, and there's some seriously smart people we had upstairs, but it doesn't always translate onto the boat without sharing information first. So the sailors were pretty key in discussing all those ideas. So on and off the water every day we would get together, firstly in a small group as a sailing team to discuss and debrief what we did out there, but then very quickly we'll get into a big team, which is the designers and some of the key boat building shore team elements that to really share ideas, because quite often you have an idea, but sometimes there's an easy solution, but someone else knows it and you don't. So by having that open forum, sometimes it brought out a lot of good ideas quickly that we've been trying to solve for months on end.
Well, good ideas is something that New Zealand focused on with regards to coming to Bermuda, and they brought with them a secret weapon, and we'll just take a look at what they arrived with.
It was a sort of soft decision, really. We had a fairly covert internal R&D project going where we tried to keep a very limited number of people on the early days concept. But I think we had done our homework, you know, and we had all the numbers on the table. We're constantly searching for perfection, for the ultimate performance, for the ultimate recipe, and we believe we might have found it. I think the decision was pretty early on that bikes were a serious contender. Yeah, it was a bold decision that it challenged the norm, if you like. So the bikes ran in parallel with grinding for a long time. We had to really prove that it was here to stay. It gradually just grew and grew, and then one day it became pretty serious. We built a one-to-one full trampoline mock-up, and we started doing some live training from getting in and out of the bikes, looking at the dynamics, and I think everyone took it a lot more seriously when we actually put some proper bikes in the hull.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Yeah, I think everyone's taking on this challenge really well, especially the crew. There's still positions to be fought for, so you're seeing a massive amount of hunger from the guys to want to, do a really slick transition and put out some big power. It's everything to play for, and the good news for us on the design side is that the guys are just really taking to it and trying to make it work. Yeah, regarding the changes to tacking, it's really thrown quite a few challenges at us. The bikes have their own peculiar dynamics with getting in and out, and then the way the power's produced, so there's a lot of practice and study that's going on. Cycling as an innovation it's really just one of many innovations on the boat. It gets a lion's share of the media because it's so visible, but it's not like we're driving a propeller that actually makes the boat go faster. So if we make more energy, we've got to be the smarter team that actually benefits from what we can do with that energy. So, there's probably 20 other equally, if not more impressive innovations on this boat that we've got to make work as well.
There's a key point in there that we'll touch on in a minute, but how did you guys feel with New Zealand turning up with bikes on boats and replacing what was traditionally arm power with leg power?
Well, I think when they first turned up, we thought it looked ridiculous, which it did. But ultimately, it was a great innovation, and it pains me to say, but the Kiwis are
you can say it.
Awfully good at that, and they've kind of paved the way in the last two America's Cup cycles of leading the innovations, and the bikes was certainly an innovation, and it was actually something that we looked at with Oracle, and we actually sent some guys to a university in the US who has a great track cycling program, and we did the studies on arm grinding versus leg grinding and cycling, and we decided, we took a more conservative approach, and thought the ergonomics and the power outputs were not so different, but what we failed to overlook, and what he touched on in the video, was that there was 20 other innovations on their boat, and one big thing that the cycling let them do was use their hands, and so they could more accurately control things, and whereas our grinders, they were grinding and generating energy with their arms, and we were controlling buttons with our feet. And so, I think you're pretty accurate with your hand rather than your feet, and that's one thing that we overlooked, and and I think we just took the more conservative approach to go the traditional route, and they kind of blew it out of the park with the bikes and the control.
And I think that's the whole thinking out of the box scenario, and I think the byproduct, because I know the media and the public really focused on the bike aspect, but I think you're right in that it was the flow-on effect of that particular act that actually created other advantages, and so there was one aspect, I think. So Blair Tuke, who was on the New Zealand boat, was able to do. We were having a chat earlier on, which I thought was a fascinating aspect, that what he could actually do then.
Yeah, so on the New Zealand boat, Blair Tuke, who was one of the cyclists, he had basically an iPad, and on the iPad was a line, and then next to the line there was a little slider, and so he would just follow the slider and match the line, and that would basically fly the boat perfectly. And so they basically had a computer flying the boat, and Blair Cheek was the interface between the computer and the control system, which was legal, and it was just a small kind of loophole in the rule, and that was the thing with that's the thing with the America's Cup, is you're really studying the rules, and we have rules advisors who are just poring over the rules every day, trying to find a way to work the rules to our advantage, and really push it, and so they just had a guy, you know, the interface between the computer and the control system, whereas we had our helmsman was basically feeling it, and so he would feel the boat move around, and you know, whereas they had you know, accelerometers and these inertia sensors, so they had like quite advanced technology in their boat to really predict what the boat was going to do next, and basically the computer was, you know, flying the boat, and so that was you know, probably the biggest groundbreaking innovation in the last America's Cup, I think, and that's ultimately what I think, you know, won the event for those guys.
Yeah, it was wonderful innovation. I think today the relevance really for the biosecurity fraternity is to have the opportunity to look through the lens of sport, and I know that America's Cup, out of all the sports, I think is probably on the cutting edge with regards to that, and so whether today is to inspire or validate, I think the lessons that, you know, these guys bring, and through the sporting prism, it's fascinating. And the one thing about America's Cup is the advancement in what goes on and the boundaries they push. So we'll move into our last segment now, which is the future, and it's going to be in New Zealand, and it's going to be hellishly exciting, and we'll take a look at what the vision is now for the AC-75.
Dramatic what's happening at the moment, really dramatic. So the lead changes for the fourth time. Here we go to mark number 3 in the last leg of the race.
So 2021, that's the theory. With regards to that being on the water, multi-hulls that fly, now mono-hulls that fly. Is there a boat that's actually done it, or is that as far as it's been? Computer generated?
Yeah, I think it's computer generated. It's a bold idea.
Is it going to work?
it's going to work because we're going to, there's going to be teams that are going to make it work. All the entries in the America's Cup, they're going to put a big team together with the best people in the world, and somehow they're going to make it work. I mean, it looks bold when I look at that video, but it's sort of exciting as well,
So again, talk us through the process, mate. How will this go? Because again, you take it from the drawings, and then what happens when the team sort of comes together, and how do you begin that process with something that is completely foreign to everybody and completely brand new?
Yeah, so at the end of this month, we get the physical rule of the America's Cup. So basically all the exact details of the boat design, the people, the dates, how it's all going to operate. So from that, we're going to learn the type of people you need. So we'll learn the type of sailors you're looking for, whether they're more athletic type people or the strategic type people. You're going to find out what sort of designers we're going to need. We're going to always need aero designers, so whether we pinch people from Formula One teams, we're going to need hydro engineers. And so you're going to basically, over the next 6 months, or even sooner, you're going to be trying to pull your team together. For a team to operate like that, we're going to be at least 100 people. So it's going to be a big team, and you just get the right people. And then, in 6 months' time, looking to, get these people together. So, where, the New Zealand team, it might be obvious they're going to base themselves out of Auckland, you'd assume. Whether if it was an Australian team.
There's an Australian team?
Kyle, is there an Australian team?
I hope so. Not that I'm aware of yet, but it'd be nice.
But then it's getting people together. So at Oracle, we're a big believer of getting the whole team together. So we'd always, whether you're a designer, sailor, boat builder, try and get as many people in the one place at the one time. So we'd always relocate everyone there because things are much more efficient. You could have these conversations a lot easier.
And then the methodology, Roger sort of touched on it before with that failing aspect and doing that. So I presume that's something, again, culturally within the group, that experiment, try, fail.
Yeah, and I think that's the very exciting thing about the next America's Cup. It's completely different. It's never been done before, and it's it's, as Sam said, it's completely out there. And a lot of people are actually quite shocked. It's a bold move by Team New Zealand, but I actually think it's a great one. And one great thing about it is the only constraint you have is your ability to think of ideas. And so if you can think of something, and then you can make it happen. And we don't have the answers today as to how this boat's going to sail, but in 6 months' time we'll have more answers, and in 12 months' time we'll have more again. And and it's just a development that we'll just keep on getting pushed. And if you can keep an open mind and which the Kiwis have demonstrated in the past 2 America's Cups with their developments and innovations, then at the end of the day you can do pretty amazing things.
Well, I think that's a good note to finish on, and leave all of you people to continue what's going to be no doubt a great and riveting day for you. But I think just to touch on that last point about considering the impossible, it's certainly something that I think resonates in today's world. And please, if you could put your hands together for 2 tremendous Australian sports ambassadors, Kyle Langford and Sam Newton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas. So a big thank you to Chris, Kyle and Sam, and thank you for travelling to be here today with us. I think there's just so many great examples there of innovation and collaboration, and how, as you say, thinking outside the box can really take you to new levels that perhaps haven't even been thought about, envisaged, or thought possible previously. And in that similar vein to biosecurity, we've seen that success in the America's Cup has relied on having that strong underlying framework, the collaboration, the ability to push those boundaries and think differently, and a genuine desire to continually learn and get better, and having that drive. And the thing that struck me greatly in it too is the bikes. That's something that really sticks in my mind, because innovation doesn't have to cost millions of dollars. It doesn't have to always be around technology. It can just simply be about thinking about things differently and how you might apply that differently. So very inspiring stuff, fellas, and good food for thought for us as we move into the next session. But before we break for morning tea, we'll throw to our final keynote speaker for today, and that's First Assistant Secretary Matt Cavell. Matt heads up the Biosecurity Policy and Implementation Division within the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources. Matt's going to talk in a bit more detail around some of our challenges that we're facing in biosecurity, both now and into the future. This will tend to give a bit of a broad sense of what we're up against, trying to manage biosecurity in such a rapidly changing environment. And hopefully it'll give you an opportunity to get your ideas flowing in your brains as you move into the breakout sessions after morning tea. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you for the impossible task. I'm following beauty, brawn, fit young sailors, middle-aged cricketer, slightly going overweight, and what am I? Anyway, we'll leave that out there. I thought it was an absolutely fabulous entry into what we have to do today, listening to Kyle and Sam talk about what they've done. And some of those challenges we've already actually been asked. They're going to fly a monohull, metre above the ground, burn above the water consistently, and Lyn's asked us to be the best in the world at what we do. Whilst there might be different ways to look at that, that is still a challenge and call to arms that I think we as a group, we as a cohort need to start thinking about. And there's a couple of other things that came out of that discussion that we just looked at that I'll draw upon. So there's no question that both Australia and New Zealand are very fortunate that we actually have a very favourable pest and disease status. It helps not only just agriculture industries export in a very competitive way, helps us actually protect our environment, helps us protect our way of life, and gives us some genuine economic advantages for our whole community. There's no question that a clean and green image relies on a good, strong biosecurity system. And as you heard from both Lyn and Roger, both systems are actually under stress. There's no question that with a glowing global trade, glowing volumes, people moving all around the world, as well as natural pathways, there's no doubt we actually are under a huge stress. And very much like New Zealand, we are seeing volumes increase every decade, 70–80%. We have restrictions at the board in terms of room. Our ability to employ more staff is restricted like New Zealand. And our ability to actually get the extra funds is just as restricted as so, not only from the community, but also from industry. So to solve that, innovation is really the key for us. It is how we're going to meet the challenges in the future. That is the way we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to think about how we innovate an entire business approach, how we better target risk both as it comes across the border, push it offshore, how we better manage risk not only at the border but when it gets here onshore as well, how we better cope with all those things. We need to undertake our work more efficiently and effectively. That goes without saying. But these challenges have been recognised by external parties as well. The Intergovernment Agreement on Biosecurity Review, which came out with a very thoughtful report, the priorities for Australia's biosecurity system, actually said that we need to make significant changes to the way we actually undertake biosecurity. And they looked for innovation, both innovation from a technical point of view, but innovation in the way we think, the way we operate, and our interactions with not only each other, but also with businesses. I mean, talk about innovation, there's lots of good innovations already out there. Some we're already trying to play with ourselves. Machine learning, robotics, next generation sequencing, new biological controls techniques, seeking a different alternative management to border interventions themselves. They're all really good things of how we actually go into to improve the way we do our things. But we need to continually adapt ourselves and need to continually look at ways to improve ourselves. And as Lyn pointed out, we haven't been idle. We actually have done some things. We've got to make sure that we recognise we actually continue to improve as we go along. We have Gary here from CSIRO. We're actually looking for some projects there, looking at some quite innovative ways to actually look at the way we do things at the border very, very differently. Looking at industrial designers, engineers, about how we might want to do a six-sided container inspection with using potentially a similar technology that Amazon Go uses for their new store in the US. We have Andrew here from and Colin from the Centre for Excellence for Biosecurity Risk Analysis. And we've been working with Melbourne University, quite an innovative approach in its own. A government department actually signing up to university and saying, we want you to help solve our problems and we'll give you freedom to publish some of those solutions. So some of them actually are not necessarily kind on us, but we actually really are quite thoughtful and say, look, please help us. And last year we launched our Plant Innovation Centre at our new plant post-entry quarantine facility, what we call Pick-a-Peck, because in government you've got to have an acronym. That's how we live, how we roll, so to speak, if I was 20 years younger. But we need to do more. These things are really good steps, but we really do need to do more. And we recognise we don't have all the answers. We cannot do this alone. No matter how much blue sky thinking we do, there's a quote that I was reading. We have something like 60,000 thoughts a day. About 95% or a bit more of those thoughts we actually had yesterday. So how do we actually get ourselves out of that? And the way we do that is collaboration. Collaboration with a whole raft of people. And one of the really interesting things that came out of the discussion we just held, we just saw, was about talking to people, different people, about different ideas, about what they do and that we can apply across. So collaboration is really key for us. But we also got to make sure we have the right foundations, because my staff do tell me I'm easily distracted by some of these new things. And we've got to make sure there's lots of new things out there that will take our attention away. So we need to make sure we actually have good foundations to build upon innovations to survive, to thrive. So last year we released a National Biosecurity Committee released some R&D priorities. The idea was to start to build a foundation which we can build upon and innovate upon. The priorities we looked at were data and intelligence. So things like machine learning algorithms, to better direct our intervention efforts. We are starting to build machine learning to how we profile containers, how we profile trade flows. Surveillance and diagnostics. Everyone talks about drones. There's lots of ways we can actually get into better ways. There's drones, there's smart traps, and there may also be a lot more people out there we can tap into as well and use technology to come. Treatment and recovery. We still rely on ways to treat things from many, many years ago. Methyl bromide, for example. We promised to phase it out 20 years ago, but we still use it today. So we need to work out how we do that. Risk and decision tools. For example, we're trialling virtual fencing. Could we use virtual fencing as a way of controlling animals outside animal disease incursion zone? So we can actually manage the zone much smarter and much tighter by using virtual fencing. General surveillance. We are getting better, and we need to get much better about actually understanding where pests are going and coming from, and how we can actually predict with greater accuracy where there's going to be an impact, so we can actually go there and actually monitor remotely, ideally. But the big thing, and it's come through today, is engagement, conversations, discussion, working together. That social side of things, how we actually get better engagement across the whole spectrum about how we work together. So these themes actually form today's breakout sessions, and so it's done by design. We talk about more of these challenges in detail through each of these things as we go through. But the game today is to hear more from each of you about what we do. And if I touch on what I heard both Sam and Kyle said, and perhaps this may go to what we might learn from some of you today, is learn from the best, adapt for what you want to do. Thinking outside of the box. There are plenty of good ideas, someone else might have them. So what we want to do today is to get everyone to share their insights, experiences, knowledges, and the results from today will be only limited by your participation and your willingness to think outside the box, to bring your experiences to the table as we start to look to solve some of these problems. And we really do thank all of you coming today, and we do hope out of today we'll actually have, as Roger said, those connections made where there will be gems of ideas formed over a cup of coffee. It might be today, it might be next week, or it might be in 3 months, where something will come up that will say, this is really, really neat. And the bike example, when Lee told me about it, I thought, gee, that sounds so simple. Why didn't someone think of that before? And those simple little things sometimes from somebody else in a different environment will actually help us solve some of these really wicked problems. So before you all go and have a cup of coffee and a chat, I do once again thank you all for today. I wish you well as you go through these sessions, and I really encourage you to be as open and as free thinking as you possibly can. Most of the good ideas come from what initially people think are silly ideas. If you go back over history, bikes was one. Now everyone's saying, well, that probably wasn't a bad idea. So be willing to share as much as you possibly can for today. And knowing that coffee's getting cold, I'll close there and welcome everyone once again. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Matt. So that concludes our keynote presentation. So thank you again to all of the speakers that had something to teach us today. And I hope that really gives us something to think about as we have our cup of coffee and then move into those breakout sessions. So morning tea is now going to be served back down where you registered, so near the Peninsula rooms. And I think the breakout sessions are going to commence still at 10:40, 45-ish, but we'll round people up. So look very forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas when those breakout sessions commence. So thank you very much, everybody.